Hey, welcome to the Hardy Wrestling Podcast Live Vibe. It's night two of my special guest. Of course, I'm your girl, Stephanie Hardy, the host and creator of the Hardy Wrestling Podcast, and of course, the voice of the Belladonna Division in Gaston, Alabama, and co host of Women's Wrestling Talk. And I'm so happy to be here with another special guest of mine who I just discovered online and just I just love her content. She is the co-host of the Church of Joshi podcast, as well as one of the hosts of the new brand spanking new show Complex Unsanctioned with Sir Wilkins of the Jobber Tears podcast. It's Alex, Queen of the Ring, Lajas. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing so well. Like I was saying before, it's so great to finally connect. We follow each other for so long on Twitter, and it's like now we're like connecting, thankfully to the internet.
Yeah, I'm so excited that we get to have this conversation because I've been watching you for a while and I love everything you're doing and everything you stand for. So I
Oh,
just had
thanks.
to have you on, and I'm just so happy that this is happening.
Oh my gosh, thank you. I'm gonna cry.
Oh, please don't cry this early now. We're just a minute in.
Okay, I'll cry in the next 5 minutes then.
Yeah. Oh, hopefully we'll get a little bit deeper with the tears or
Yeah.
something like that. Because if you cry, I guarantee you I'm gonna cry and it's gonna be a whole thing.
The
But
waterworks.
yes. So I have to ask the question that I ask all of my guests, and that's when did you fall in love with wrestling?
I fell in love with wrestling probably like the day I was born because I grew up in New York. I grew up in the Bronx. And so my dad was really into wrestling, and I have two older brothers. So they were all into wrestling. And I was honestly born into it. Like my earliest memory in life was Wrestlemania 12, and that's when I fell in love with Shawn Michaels. And ever since then, like it was always a family tradition growing up where we would go to like the dollar store on like Fordham Road or something, and then we would get these blank VHS tapes, and then we would record the pay-per-views, and we would have this big Sunday family dinner, but we would have it in front of the TV. And that was just like a tradition that we just always did. So wrestling was always a part of my life. I mean, growing up with two older brothers, they had all the action figures, the wrestling buddies, the video games, and I got all of their hand me downs. Which my mom is lucky because for, you know, a girl to be into like most of the things that her brother is into, she didn't really have to buy much except for Barbie dolls. But even then, like my Barbie dolls were like, super kicking Shawn Michaels back in the day. So
Ah.
yeah, I know. So yeah, I mean, like I fell in love with wrestling at a very, very young age. But when I was young, I also wanted to be an actor, and I just had the bug for entertainment. So growing up and watching wrestling, I viewed it more as theater than a sport. And in our house, we got rowdy about wrestling the same way like some people would get about football. But for me, like it was the rowdiness and the theater combined with the pageantry that really like stood out to me. So I've loved it ever since. And then later on in life, I I went to acting school. So like it's funny cuz there were some elements of like promos that I was studying for an acting class, and it's just like I found it similar, but my professors were like, "This is weird. You're watching wrestling." And it's like it's the same thing. It's acting. you
I
know?
mean, it is the same thing.
Yeah.
Like, I know a lot of people probably in academia would probably sort of look at it as kind of like a strange thing to sort of compare, but ultimately it really is. Because I remember one time I tried to apply for a performing arts school and I actually used an example of wrestling in it. And I believe that somehow or another my application wound up not going through partly because of it. But that's another story. But I love how basically you were into it because it was a family affair. And that's ultimately how a lot of people start. It's a generational thing.
Yeah, for sure. Like I love always when I find a wrestling fan that I connect with. I love asking them, like, how did you get into wrestling? The same way that, your question. And it's always funny how sometimes it's like grandmas, or it's just like my grandma used to love wrestling. And even
Mhm.
like people that aren't mainstream fans, that are just like people that are casual fans or even not casual fans that just know about wrestling, they
Yes.
always have a story of a cousin or a god brother or the kid down the street that had the free pay-per-view box, cable box. They would always go and watch it. So I think it's always interesting to ask that question because there's so many people that have different journeys in discovering wrestling. And especially like for me, I started like really young when I was like pretty much out the womb. But there's so many different people that are like, oh, I just started like last year, or I just started 2 years ago, 3 years ago. But it's all the same story of like there's always somebody that they know and love that have connected them to wrestling. And that's
Yes.
why I like wrestling so much. And I think that's why I get most of my passion for wrestling, because it's all something that we just universally love and we universally are entertained by. Whether you love it, you hate it, you're booing the guy, you're crying, you're laughing, you think something sucks, like you're still entertained in some capacity. And so that's why I love it so much. And it's so nice to connect with different people and connect with different fans. And even like going to huge wrestling weekends of just like, oh yeah, who do you like? Like, how did you get into this and stuff? It's always a fun conversation.
It is like the connections that you make and the friendships that you wind up making from it. Like all of that is really cool. Like I love stuff like that. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So, who were some of your favorites, early in your fandom?
Definitely Shawn Michaels.
Yeah, you did mention him, but did you have any others
So I really loved Shawn and I really loved China. China. Well, I'm wearing her shirt.
on your shirt? Yeah.
Yeah. And I have like two Shawn Michaels action figures staring at me, so it's funny. I loved China because growing up, again, I was always like the girl that was into guy things. So I found myself like mostly like hanging out with some of the boys in class, or like trying to connect because I liked the things that they liked.
Mhm.
And so for me, when I saw China on screen, I was like, oh, that's me, like she wasn't this like, you know, super skinny blonde woman on screen, and that wasn't me growing up. So seeing her, like, I fully connected with her. And it was always such a joy to see her on screen and even going toe to toe with the men. Like I was like, she's so badass. She's so cool. um so I really really loved her growing up. um and oh man, there's so many. I mean, I really loved Stone Cold Steve Austin, but a part of that does have to do with the fact that my dad kind of looks like Stone Cold Steve Austin. So growing up, and I would go to elementary school, and the kids would like whisper and like, I think that's Stone Cold. I think that's Stone Cold. So one day, my dad, he had a camo hat. And he like picked me up from school wearing the camo hat, and everyone, like all the kids, freaked, and all the kids were convinced that my dad was Stone Cold Steve Austin. So there was like a good hot second where I wasn't bullied for like a semester.
Oh, that is so cute.
Yeah, I would say like those were really my favorite growing up. I mean, like I really loved um when I grew up I was mostly watching WWE. So I really loved everyone, to be honest, like Triple H, McFoley, Taker, just anyone that was on my screen and I was always entertained. I really liked them.
Mhm.
um but growing up, like I've found my official favorites like Manami Toyota, Bull Nakano, so yeah, yeah, I have my I have my favorites, and then I have people where I'm just like, oh yeah, I like you for a little while, until you turn heel, and then I don't like you.
Yeah, that's kind of how it is. It's sort of like you love a person and then you wind up not liking a person depending on their journey.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I am with Becky Lynch right now. It's
Oh
like I
really?
loved her. I absolutely loved her, and I love her, in real life outside of wrestling. But deep down inside, like as a character, where she was like last year, I we fell out. We fell out
I
after
mean,
SummerSlam. We fell out, and I was just like, no, and I just I couldn't take it anymore.
I don't blame you because when she came in and like did Bianca Belair dirty, I was like,
Mm-mm.
Becky, you were my girl, but I don't know about right now. You know?
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
exactly how I felt.
And then she lost at WrestleMania, and I'm like, maybe Becky Lynch isn't that bad.
Yeah, I was happy. I was thrilled. I was I was thrilled that Becky lost at WrestleMania. Okay, like I am on the Bianca train, so I was ready for Bianca to get her revenge because
Yeah.
Becky had been ducking her. She had, so I was
Bianca
ready.
right now is just like so hot right now. I love her so
Yes.
much. And that entrance live, that WrestleMania entrance,
Oh.
I was like getting teared up and emotional in person. Like I was
Oh.
so happy just for her to have that moment, that full like WrestleMania entrance moment. She's coming out and she's like swinging her hair and skipping so high. Like I was like, this is your moment, girl. I
Yeah,
love you,
and then
Becky,
with the
but no.
band.
Yes, the band. Oh my god, the band sounds so good too.
Yes, they
Uh,
sounded amazing. Shout out to Texas Southern's Ocean of Soul because that was one of the best moments ever. And then it's just like, for me, that was just like a big part of representation on that part because that's just all I grew up hearing, like
yeah.
HBCU marching bands all the time. Then we're in Alabama too, so there's like a bunch of them that would come through
Oh,
my high school all the time. So watching all of that happen in wrestling, even though it's happened before, because John Cena had it, had FAMU before. It was
yeah.
just seeing that, with someone like her, it just fit and it was perfect. And it made my heart soar. It was great. Like I was watching it with my boyfriend and he was in marching band too. So it was just a lot going on. We were just like, oh
Oh,
my God. It was just
that's so
it was
cute.
amazing. We were so happy. It was a whole moment. But yes, we're Team Bianca on here. Like I've had like at least 2 episodes dedicated to her. Like it's been, oh my God. I could sing her
Yeah.
praises forever. It's crazy. But back to you though. So did anyone outside of the fan culture of wrestling ever try to make you feel like you were less than or like you were small because you were a wrestling fan?
Like anyone just in real life in
Yeah, in
general?
real life.
Yeah. All the time.
Really?
Yeah, I mean like, growing up, um wrestling was always uncool, you know? And so I remember I do have a good story. Um I remember it was freshman year of high school
Mhm.
and uh this was I think this was 2006. So 2006, freshman year of high school. I had just started high school, so this was September, and I had like John Cena and Shawn Michaels all over my locker and my notebooks, and like I was like, I guess the WWE girl freshman year.
Mhm.
There's always one like person that's really into wrestling, and that was me freshman year of high school. And I remember I there was this guy who was like a junior, and we had like a study hall period together, and like we would talk about wrestling. And then I said like, I'm actually going to my first ever like wrestling live event. And my first ever wrestling live event was a Monday Night Raw in Madison Square Garden on 9/11. So it
Whoa.
was like, yeah, but it was like, the anniversary of 9/11. So it
Mhm.
was like a huge moment, and like Lillian Garcia sang the national anthem. That was Trish Stratus's last Monday Night Raw because that was the go home show to Unforgiven in Canada with her versus Lita. So it was like a really great Monday Night Raw to go to. And I
Mhm.
remember I went back to school the next day, and I was like super excited, super jazzed up. And I went to that guy that I knew that was also a wrestling fan who was a junior. And I was like, hey, I went to the WWE live event and this and that. And like, the people that he was with were making fun of me, and he chimed in because it was like, the cool thing to do to when you're that age to make fun of
Mhm.
somebody if all your friends are making fun of somebody. And that
Mhm.
day on, like my soul was crushed, and I was like, I guess I'm not gonna watch wrestling anymore. And I was like watching, but I wasn't very vocal about it, especially on MySpace at that time. And like I just like slowly kind of faded away with wrestling. It was always kind of in the background. Um, but yeah, there were like people that just weren't, I don't know, it's just one of those things, especially when you're younger, people make fun of you because of that. People are like, "Oh, you still watch that stuff, and like it makes you, makes you feel some type of way where it's like, "Damn, should I not love the thing that I love so much, and especially something that I've loved ever since I was a kid, and something that I bonded over with my family." And there's peer pressure, teen angst, all that stuff that goes into it, and so I kind of slowly drifted away, um, and then applied to college, went to college, and I started kind of incorporating that because I loved movies and I loved TV, but there were some things that we learned in acting school where I was like, I see all of this happening in wrestling. So I that's when I like started to get back into it. I was YouTubing stuff. But yeah, I mean like, growing up there was always people that were like why do you watch that kind of stuff? But over the years, I've learned that that's like part of my strength, when you're into something, when you like something, when you're passionate about something that is that unique and it's such a niche, like that's part of your strength as you're a person, like a part of your personality in a good way. And so I had to learn that, but I also had to learn that the hard way of being bullied. So it was tough, but eventually I found my place.
Yeah, and it's kind of what you have to do in the midst of stuff like that. Because I'll never forget when I was in college and I, would tell people that I was a wrestling fan, but I wouldn't necessarily lead with it at that point. I would actually say that. And then I remember one person actually told me that they felt like that was just for kids,
Yeah.
or just like 2 year olds or something like that. And I'm just sitting here like, well, how do you think 2 year olds get into it? Because grown-ups are still into it.
Yeah.
So it's just some people, just don't understand it, and then they have a tendency to kind of just run their mouth or whatever. But in my mind, I knew I wasn't going to ever stop because it's just a part of who I am, and it's been in also in my family for generations too.
Mm.
So I mean, and I know that wrestling has given me too much for me to just give it up at this point.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's just kind of how I feel about it. And I feel like the others who don't necessarily understand it, I guess it's just not for them. But as for me, I know what it does for me. So,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah. And I hate that you had to have that experience, but at the same time, I mean, whatever, they just didn't get it. And I hate that that person felt so insecure within themselves to where they felt like they couldn't defend you.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely like made me not trust a lot of people, and like it made me, you know, bullying sucks, but it also shaped me into the person that I am today. So it's unfortunate that that person had to do that and stoop that low to do that,
Right.
but it's it's hard and it takes a lot of work to get to the mindset of not caring what other people have to say, because it's very easy for other people to be like, "Oh, don't listen to them." And especially online, like, I'm sure you have dealt with your share of bullying online where people are
Oh,
just
yeah.
like, going back and forth with you about something, again, an opinion or something that you like. It's easier said than done to say, "Oh, just ignore that person. Don't pay any mind. Whatever they say is not true." Where it's just like, "Yeah, but that's the stuff that keeps me up at night at 3 a.m. and I'm thinking about it and I'm like, am I doing something right with my life?" But, you know, it sucks that that person had to do that, but at the same time, you just gotta put up your middle finger and walk away, you know?
Exactly. Exactly. So I know that you talked a little bit off camera about your work in wrestling and having worked with WWE. So had you ever considered the possibility of working as an athlete before?
as a wrestler?
Yeah.
Yeah, actually I have. I when I was bartending after college, I bartended and I met this bouncer. I feel like all wrestlers have a story of them being bouncers.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I know. It's like there's like a deep circuit market for like the connection of like wrestlers and
And
bouncers.
bouncers, yes.
So I met this bouncer who I think he trained somewhere in New Jersey. I'm not too sure where in Jersey. But there was one late night, I think it was like the MSG channel up here in New York. They would play old like WWE clips and like old WWE like countdowns and everything. So like he was watching it with me and I was like just going off knowing wrestling the way that I do and he's like I never met another girl that liked wrestling the way that you do. Like you know your shit. And I was like, "Yeah, I like it." He's like, "Have you ever thought about becoming a wrestler?" And I was like, I've never been physically fit, so no, I've never thought about being a wrestler. And he was like, maybe you should like come check it out. So one day he picked me up and like we drove to Jersey and we went to this school and he was just like showing me around and I sat in one of the training sessions and I'll never forget Sunny Kiss was actually there in one of the training sessions and I believe somebody else was there too. I don't remember who exactly it was, but I remember like Sunny stood out to me because I was like, huh, like that's really interesting that someone like Sunny is wrestling. Like that's really cool, and it opened my eyes to the possibility of um, just wrestling being I guess more than just a boys club, you know?
Mhm.
Cuz growing up there was never really that opportunity, especially with the bra and panty matches and everything. So I never thought it
Yeah.
was in the realm. And this was way before like the Four Horsewomen joined NXT and the NXT was booming, and especially way before NXT Brooklyn. So I sat through and I was like, okay, maybe I can wrestle. And then I did one session with him like the next week and I got a concussion just doing like a simple
Oh.
roll and I was like, nope, this is not for me. I can't do this. I can't do this. And I didn't even know I had a concussion until I went to my ex's house and like he picked me up, my ex at that time. He picked me up and he was like, "Are you okay?" I was like, "Yeah, I just don't really know where I am right now." He's like, "I think you're
Oh.
concussed." And I was like, "Oh, cool. Okay, this is my first concussion. Sick. I'm never doing this ever again." And I felt bad and like sometimes I think back and I'm like, is my opportunity of that window missed? But um I mean, I paved uh my own path into this industry, into this business. So I guess it worked out at the end. No
Yeah, I
concussions.
see. I see it did work out. I mean, clearly everything's cool with you and everything in wrestling. You got your own lane, your own shows and everything. But it's just a question that I tend to get a lot of the time whenever I talk about what I do in wrestling is, they ask a lot of people ask me if I'm an athlete. And I was just like, no, like I hate pain. I
Yeah.
cannot stand pain. Like you talking about your concussion. I've never had a concussion. Basically, even though I know I've fallen and stuff like that, but I've never done anything that crazy enough to possibly injure myself that bad because I hate pain. So I know I could never be in the ring. I can talk about it, but as far as doing it, no. Mm-mm.
Yeah. I don't yeah, and I don't really have health insurance, so like it's just not going to work out.
Yeah, yeah. There's also that
There's
part
also
too.
that part.
Yeah, that's a lot. Yeah, I hate that. So you talked about, your first live event being at the Madison Square Garden. Like how was that? Like how did that feel, being in that rarefied air?
um It was really great. It was really great to be honest, because I went with my whole family. So it was like, finally my first live event was with my family, so I got to share that with them.
Mhm.
And there's always such a special feeling. Like even today, going to MSG, there's just always like a special feeling in the air. And I think because Madison Square Garden is, the arena, the most famous arena in the world. But I feel like for wrestling fans, and this could possibly be the same for like basketball fans or boxing fans, where when you grow up and you have watched so many important events take place in this arena, and finally being able to walk in was such a special moment. And I remember like we immediately went to the merch store and like we got the WWE shirts for the whole family. I remember I had like a DX shirt, and it was the one where it was like they're animated, and in the back they're animated and they're like showing off their ass. I I had that shirt, and like my brother had a Rey Mysterio shirt, and just like it was just such a special feeling, like to just finally be there and to witness that. And it was a really, like, again, I have to say it's a really good Monday Night Raw. If anybody could go back and watch September 2006 Monday Night Raw, it was really good. Like, Edge was champion at the time, and there was like a tag match with John Cena. Umaga opened the show with Ric Flair.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and like Triple H had a match with Vince McMahon as the main event, and Shawn Michaels got beat up, and then I was crying because Shawn Michaels got beat up, and like it was a whole
Oh,
thing. But yeah, it was a special feeling, and again, like I think it was more magical because it was at MSG.
yeah, definitely. I know the first event I ever saw at MSG, it was on DVD, but it was still, MSG or whatever. It was Wrestlemania 20. And
Oh
I
God,
just
yeah.
remember the big everybody making such a big deal about it simply because it was going to Madison Square Garden. And
Hmm.
that was a really, really good pay-per-view. Just so many great things happened with that pay-per-view. Like I loved it. You had Victoria and Molly Holly fighting in a hair versus hair match. You had the Rock and Sock connection reuniting and fighting with Evolution. And of course, and then you had Eddie Guerrero fighting Kurt Angle, and that infamous match between Brock Lesnar and Goldberg.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there was just so many great matches on that, and I just remember feeling like, man, this really looks like a party. And then another thing that I loved about it was the fact that the Harlem Boys Choir sang the national anthem, and I was
Oh
just like,
yeah.
that was just the coolest thing to me. I was just like, this is amazing. And it made me want to go at some point. So maybe I feel like New York just keeps calling me for some strange reason. And
You gotta come.
I gotta come. I
You gotta
gotta.
come. Gotta get a slice.
Oh,
Walk into
God.
MSG.
Oh, my God. I think I would just pass out. Throughout the whole trip to New York, I would just pass out. Just so many things I want to go see. So, outside of wrestling, what are some other fandoms that you are a part of? Like, what are some other things that you love?
Okay, so I love this question because I don't get to talk about this enough. I love Star Wars. I love Star
Oh,
Wars. I am a huge. I got like a little baby Yoda right there.
uh huh.
I love Star Wars. It was it was one of like there's like a few movies that really got me like when I was younger to make me really want to become an actor, and Star Wars was definitely one of them because I think at the time like Phantom Menace was coming out in the 90s, and so like my brother had the box set of all the movies, and like we binged it one weekend, and I fell in love with Star Wars. So yeah, I'm huge on that. I've never been to Galaxy's Edge. I really want to one day. I'm praying that I do. But yeah, I was obviously like I was younger for the prequels, but when the new
Mhm.
movies came out, I was in there like swimwear every midnight, like preview, like showing. I was there. I was crying. I had my opinions about The Last Jedi. Like,
Oh God.
I am all about it. I love it so much. I have the Millennium Falcon tattooed on my one of my legs. Like I really love Star Wars. And I'm also I'm a huge fan of Back to the Future. I
Oh
really love,
wow.
yeah, I really love that movie. That was another movie that really wanted to make me become an actor. I was really into sci-fi when I was a kid. So, sci-fi movies like that was like it just really got me. And Back to the Future 2 was the first movie of the franchise that I watched. So, I watched that and I was like, I want to be an actor because I want to time travel. And I'm like 5 years old. Uh, but I am really into like Marvel as well. I love Marvel. I'm very excited for Multiverse of Madness coming out in like 2 weeks. I'm very deep into X-Men, and I'm hoping that they introduce the X-Men into the MCU for this movie, hopefully soon. But yeah, I've always been a nerd. I've always been a nerd. When I got out of college, I would go every Wednesday to the comic book shop and get comic books, like the single issues and the trades, and all the single issues were coming out. And like I was collecting The Walking Dead at the time, and Uncanny Avengers, and like most of all the books on that shelf is just all comic books. And like the bottom shelf are all single issues. But yeah, I don't know, I just like I've always just have been engulfed in this like nerd culture. So it just, and again, like wrestling just came hand in hand with that, because wrestling growing up, like there were comic books and there were video games about wrestling.
Mhm.
So again, like I just viewed wrestling because there was Star Wars and Marvel, and um I would even include Back to the Future. Like I would see that as like nerd culture. So with wrestling, it's like, oh, this is also nerd culture. It isn't sports and being athletic. I mean, it is athletic as hell, but for me, the pageantry and the theater and the drama of it all, I always just saw it as nerd culture. So, it's funny because we were talking earlier where some people don't accept wrestling sometimes, and especially people that aren't really too familiar with wrestling, they almost just don't accept it as another form of nerd culture or another form of a fandom that exists. So yeah, for me, like it just all of it just came hand in hand. So yeah, I love all that stuff. That's like, I love going to comic cons, and I love going to comic cons and going to like Artist Alley and seeing all these like smaller artists, and just like to see their art and to see them display the passion that they have for different um, forms of entertainment. And they're just like they have like such beautiful artwork of all these fandoms, and just like that feeling of like, oh, I'm not alone, like I'm home, like just like walking into comic cons and stuff. That's, yeah, I love that. I also realized I circled that answer right back to wrestling, but
No, it's okay. It is okay because all of it really does, connect to each other in a way. Because even now, even with Comic Cons, it's like you're seeing more and more wrestling being incorporated into stuff like that. And it's just, and I'm so happy that that's happening because it deserves to be, in the same space as a lot of those fandoms. So I'm really, because I know even we have in Alabama, we have Comic Con, which is like an
mm-hmm.
anime con, but for the first time they incorporated wrestling within it and had a wrestling show like for 2 nights. And it was just the coolest. Yeah, it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. I was just like, I'm so happy this is happening because it just deserves. This
Oh my
fandom is just as
gosh.
passionate, if not more, than others. So I'm just so it definitely deserves that type of credit and that much upliftment. So I'm really happy that you like all of those things. And I actually like Marvel too. So I'm kind of in that boat with you in terms of watching the multiverse of madness. I just feel like all heck is gonna break loose.
Oh
Like,
my gosh, I am
oh God, I'm so
so
scared.
excited. See, I have a
You're
theory.
excited, I'm scared.
I
I'm
I'm
frightened.
I'm scared a little bit, but only because I have a theory that with the Thor trailer that recently released,
Yeah,
I don't think they showed everything because there's something in Multiverse of Madness that affects Thor.
probably.
Something like that. I don't know. You know how Marvel sometimes like they'll put one thing out on a trailer and then it's not what it is, and then it's the movie, and it's like, wait, you edited that for the trailer, so we want to get spoiled. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. I'm also scared because I don't know what's gonna happen. I don't know what's gonna go down, but I'm also very excited for this next phase. And I was really into WandaVision. Oh God, I
Oh, I
loved.
loved WandaVision too. It was so good.
It was so good. And I used to be like a Nick at Night kid where I would
Hmm.
watch like I Love Lucy and everything and like the Brady Bunch. So when they paid like homage to those shows and like the way they were filmed too, like it was just a love story to television and or a
Yes.
love letter to television. Oh man, I loved that show so much. I could go
Yes,
on
I
about it.
loved
We
it.
could
I
start a
loved
whole
it.
Marvel podcast about it.
Oh my gosh. Well, maybe that'll be in the works for you cuz I mean, Jesus. Cuz it's
Maybe.
it's definitely worth it. It's definitely worth it. So, it's great. So, how what other hobbies do you have outside of wrestling?
I actually just picked up pottery.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. I just picked it up, so I'm not an expert on the wheel yet. But it's something that I've always wanted to learn. And there's a show on HBO Max called The Great Pottery Throwdown. And I was binging that for a little bit. And I was like, this is really cool. I wonder if there's any pottery classes near me. I took a class last summer in Brooklyn, and it was a lot of fun. I really loved it, and especially someone that media people in wrestling, I feel like we never have a break, right? Because like
Yeah,
there's
we
always
don't.
some
We
you
really
you
don't.
feel me, like, there's always some news coming out, there's always something to catch up with, there's always something to report, there's always something to watch, you know and that could burn
Mhm.
you out pretty easily. And I feel like that's definitely a conversation that like some media people should be a little bit more open with if they're willing to, because that is a vulnerable thing to open up about. But like,
It is.
burnout is real. And there's been a few times, like, I started my YouTube channel, and that first year I was dropping a video every Friday, and like 6 months in I was like, I don't know if I could do this for like a whole decade.
Mhm.
So like, I feel like we all need that escape, whether it's video games, movies, comic books, whatever it is. But for me, it was pottery, and I just like chuck my phone to the corner. Bless you. I chucked my phone to the corner.
Excuse me, guys.
I'll get. I chucked my phone to the corner, and I was just like, I'm not even gonna look at my screen. I'm just gonna get my hands wet and dirty with pottery. So yeah, I watched that show, and then I took a class in Brooklyn, and then I discovered there's a studio near my neighborhood that had memberships, and I recently signed up, and it's been amazing. I haven't made anything yet, but I've been practicing some stuff. So that's definitely one of my hobbies, or one of my main hobbies right now outside of wrestling.
Yeah, sounds relaxing.
It is. It is. The cleanup is not, but
I imagine it's not, but just the act of it just seems really relaxing. Like I've seen people do it, like in movies or stuff like that, and I just be like, you know what, that looks really nice to
yeah.
make something and create something. Oh
I just need my own personal Patrick Swayze behind me.
God, yes. Yes, Alex. We all need Patrick Swayze, don't
A
we?
Patrick Swayze or a Demi Moore.
Right.
I'm by. I'll take anything I can get.
Exactly. Either one, either one. I get it, definitely. So, how would you say you feel about the state of wrestling? What's good about it, and what could be improved upon, in your opinion?
uh, this is a good question. I think right now, the state of wrestling, I think it's at I think in terms of variety, isn't it? It is in a really great spot. There is something for everyone when it comes to wrestling. Um, I see the whole back and forth of like AEW is better, WWE is better. It's like, y'all, we were never gifted an opportunity to have these options. Like some of us were, because people were better on the internet than others at finding
Yes.
it. But like, the fact that we have so much happening and we have access to so much wrestling just around the world, I think that's really great. And I feel like I see a lot of shining stars, especially in the independent scene, that's they're people that I never imagined that would be in wrestling when I grew up. So to see them conquer in that space, people like Trisha Dora, Edith Surreal, Ziggy Hyam, Willow Nightingale, Layla Hirsch, Thunder Rosa, even, like, the list goes
Yes.
on. And it's so amazing to see so many different wrestlers from so many different backgrounds that have so many different identities, and they represent so many different people that watch, and now they have the opportunity to entertain when sometimes their identities would almost be the butt of the joke when it comes to a storyline or a feud.
Right.
Sometimes it is still, but other times, like, I feel like now especially fans are smarter and fans are a little bit more vocal of like, hey, that's not cool. Not so much of like, I don't like that, but it's more so of like, that's not very appropriate. And so I like the direction that we're going with wrestling. The one thing I would change about wrestling, um, I think there's always room to grow no matter what department in wrestling, but I feel like in terms of women's wrestling, the improvement that should be happening there is just having more women in charge of their divisions. I feel
Mhm.
like we do need to have more women behind the scenes. I recently read that Maria Kanellis was connected to with the possibility of Ring of Honor and the women's division of Ring of Honor, and she was doing an amazing job last year. I hope that she's given that opportunity. And I would love to see, I love AEW, but something needs to happen with that women's division. And I feel
Yeah.
like the only way to really do it and to have better storylines and to have meaningful storylines that are not just for a title is to have women behind the scenes as writers, as bookers,
Mhm.
probably, or something to help out with these divisions, because it's not the talent. It's definitely not the talent, but it's definitely some higher ups that should probably listen to you know a woman every now and then. So I think overall in wrestling, I love where it's at right now. The variety is good. Also, I think in terms of like wrestling media, there are so many amazing people in wrestling media now, and especially there are so many amazing women now, cuz like back when I started 5 years ago, at least like the mainstream people on YouTube that were talking about wrestling, there weren't a lot of women on. And that was like one of the main reasons why I wanted to start it, where it's like, where are the girls? Where are the girlies at? And so ever since, like, I've seen a lot of people like starting up, and it's just like it's so awesome to see. Like, it's so awesome to see so many different voices and so many different opinions that you know, they make you think a little. Or it's just like, huh, I never really thought of things that way. And that's exciting about consuming any product, whether it's wrestling or Marvel or Star Wars, where you have that different perspective where it's just like, huh, I wouldn't have thought about it like that. So I think overall wrestling is in a good state, but there is always room for improvement.
Yeah, definitely. That's basically how I feel in a sense. Like I feel like there's always room for improvement, of course, but in the midst of it all, like it's still a really great, space for it to be in because I just remember, when I was a kid, there were only two shows you could watch. And now it
Mm-hmm.
just feels like there's like 10,000 shows you can watch. And even with that, not even just watching on TV, but also going to a lot of various shows that you don't see on television, but shows that are just growing and promotions that are also growing as well. And watching stars that you may not have ever thought about before, begin to blossom and then find their way to television. And that's exactly what I 100% agree with you in the sense of having women in charge a whole lot more, because we've seen the few results of what can happen when women are in charge. Like, they can create some of the greatest wrestling shows that you've ever seen. So I feel like more opportunity should be given, with that as well. And I agree with you with that 100%. And it's so funny you were talking about women and more women podcasting and talking about wrestling and stuff like that. It felt like when I started, there was a lot, but still, like, it felt like there was a lot to where I was trying to figure out, where am I gonna fit in?
Yeah.
Yeah, like, where am
Yeah.
I gonna fit? But I know pretty sure, the longer I've been doing it, the more that I'm able to sort of see, where my voice sort of fits in. So I'm happy about that. And I'm happy that there are so many of those women who have come back to sort of want to help me and stuff. So that's cool.
Yeah, of course. It's always good to see more women conquer this space, but it's even greater to see each of us uplift each other, cuz it's like at the end of the day, we we go through some stuff as
Yeah,
women
we
in this
do.
space. Just we could breathe and people will be like, your opinion sucks. Like, I didn't even say anything, like,
Hmm.
and it's like people will still hate you, people will do that, and sometimes honestly it's because we're women, and it sucks to say that, but that's sometimes the case. But it is nice to see more women, and it's nice to see more women in the space, but it's even greater to see them succeed and to see them like conquer their own paths and conquer their own milestones. And yeah, it's really amazing to see that, and it's really amazing to have the opportunity sometimes to like meet up with each other in person, and like uh, I met up with Ella J uh, Samara.
Yes,
Yeah,
Samira.
Samira. Sorry. Yes, Samira. And I met up with them, and I was able to tell them, my brain just like, my
I
brain is
get
like
it.
starting to fart because it's like close to 8 a.m. 8 p.m. But I ran into them at WrestleMania weekend at the Superstore, and I was able to tell them, like, like, please keep going with what you're doing. Like, I know we all get hate online, and we all like have that one person in our mentions, in our notifications, saying we don't know wrestling, we don't know what we're talking about, blah 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 blah. But it's nice that I was able to pull them aside and was just like, please keep going, please do what you're doing. And people like them, and so many women in this space inspire me. Like, I started out Complex Unsanctioned, and we started doing interviews with people, and I've never interviewed people. Like, I've never done interviews before, but I studied them. Like, I studied so many different women, even like Wind Down Wrestling.
Yeah.
I've studied them, and it's just like and even being interviewed by so many different women for their own podcast, where it's like I pick up little things from them, because it's like I'm also learning, because listen, I don't know what I'm doing in this space either, but we got to stick together. So
Definitely. It's so funny that you did mention how you never really like interviewed before, because my next question was going to be like, when exactly did you come to the decision of using your voice in this space of wrestling media?
so I actually made the decision in 2017, and it was I went to my first WrestleMania, which was WrestleMania 33. And I always tell this story of how, like, there was these two bigger dudes, like, they looked like they were training to wrestle, like they were like muscle men, and they were sitting behind me throughout the show. And like, you're at WrestleMania, you're getting excited, and you're like dropping, I don't know, you're just commentating, you're at WrestleMania, and especially your first
Right.
WrestleMania. So for me, I was just like, talking the whole time and being like, oh, that person's not gonna get this, or they should have done this that way, or whatever. And these guys came up from behind me and they were like, "Do you have a podcast?" Because I was like shooting the shit with my friends as well. So they were like, "Do you have a podcast? Because this would be interesting to hear because we don't hear like a girl talking about wrestling like you." And I was like, "No, I don't." So I went home and I like studied YouTube and podcasting, the algorithm, like how to stay consistent and blah 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 blah. So I
Mhm.
studied that for a year and I saved up to get my own camera equipment and I uploaded my first YouTube video, which was me being at the first Women's Royal Rumble.
Mhm.
And that was a great opportunity to be there because the first Women's Royal Rumble, I was very emotional. I'm sure you feel this way where it's like the first Women's Royal Rumble, it feels like we made it, like the first
Yes.
women's Wrestlemania main event and everything, like it's like it feels like we made it. So um yeah, I went to that and that video blew up and I've done it ever since. And at first it was just kind of it was a space to just um be myself and to be passionate about something that I love, um and then it started to grow. And then it started to grow and honestly I started it out because one, I wanted to be a part of this space and to be um a woman with a voice in wrestling, but at the same time, it was a new outlet for me to be on camera because I wasn't really auditioning at that time. I wasn't really acting. Um, and I had like an improv and sketch group that disbanded. So I didn't really have much of a creative outlet at that time.
Mhm.
So I started out 2018 and it's been going great ever since.
All right. And then you have your podcast that you co-host called Church of Joshi. So, do you guys only specifically talk about Japanese wrestling or do you talk about really all of it?
We only focus on Japanese wrestling. So
Okay.
we only focus on more on the women's side. So we only focus on Joshi wrestling, which is promotions like TJPW, which is Tokyo Joshi Pro Wrestling, and Stardom, Ice Ribbon, and any like, especially like the past Joshi women like Bull Nakano, Asha Kong, AJW in the 90s. So we focus more on that because right now it's just like there's not a lot of people really covering that as much. Deadlock does a really great job with that, but yeah, it was something that we just discovered honestly during the pandemic. We would have these Zoom parties, and one day we picked a Manami Toyota Akira Hokuto match, and Kayla actually had the idea because that was when she was starting up her own Twitch channel, and
Mhm.
she was like, "Hey, why don't we like do something together? Let's like do a a Joshi show." And I was like, "Okay, yeah, let's do it." And it's blossomed to Church of Joshi, and we do that every Sunday, and it's been great. We've had a sponsorship with Choco Pro, which is a promotion that's actually free on YouTube,
Mhm.
and it's Emi Sakura's there, Lulu Pencil, Mei Saruga, Aja Kong, and not Manami Toyota, Minoru Suzuki has actually made appearances at that promotion, and we've had sponsorships with them, and it's been great. It's been great to have a program where it I'm learning as well, because I
Yeah.
I love that you never stop learning, and so with Joshi, it's really like our congregation. That's what we call them, our audience, but our congregation really teaches us about Joshi, and they let us know who we should be looking out for, who we should watch, what pay-per-views we should keep an eye out for. And I feel like that's what wrestling should be, instead of being condescending to each other and talking down to one another and be like, "Oh, you don't know this." It's like,
Mhm.
no, teach me. Let's learn together. What are you excited about, that you're passionate about? And our audience is very passionate about Joshi, and they definitely let us know, when they like an episode and when they don't like an episode. But um, so far it's been very positive, and it's been really great to especially work with my best friend. She's Kayla's all is awesome. I love her so much, and she does all the graphics for our episodes, and she does an amazing job. And it's nice to have a space where we are two people in wrestling, but we're two people that are still just fans, and we just want to like mark out a little bit. And especially when we watch Joshi, it's nice to freak out about these crazy moves that they do, but it's also really nice to just be in awe of their ring attires and their ring entrance gear. And yeah, it's just a really nice space to just learn more and not feel like someone's gonna be condescending about it, if that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. And I'm glad that you actually started a show like that to where people who really love Joshi wrestling can feel like they have a place where someone else loves it. And then you guys can continue to just grow together. And I'm actually interested in listening to it myself because I haven't really seen a lot of that, a lot of Joshi wrestling, but it does inspire me to sort of want to learn more.
Yeah, yeah, definitely check us out. We're mostly on Twitch, but we are launching a Patreon pretty soon. So yeah, actually this weekend.
Okay.
So yeah, it'll be available really soon, and we've got a lot of fun things planned for the Patreon. So we're really happy to continue to spread the word of Joshi.
That's great. So, did you ever think that even with your hosting of Church of Joshi, with your best friend, that you would host a show like Complex Unsanctioned with the likes of Sir Wilkins? Like, was that something that ever, occurred to you that would happen? And once it did happen, how did you feel about it?
I never plan out anything. I don't have goals. I just do what I have to do, Like even appearing on the bump and in WWE programming, like
Oh, cool.
that was never part of, you know, the assignment, if you will. It was just get online, turn on a camera, and talk about wrestling. So to have the opportunity to be approached by Complex and to work with Sir Wilkins on this show is honestly a blessing. It really is a blessing. Like I again, it was never in the horizon for me, I guess. Like I just it never was a goal, and when it happened, I was like, me? Are you sure you got the right email? It's like one of those moments where it's like, are you sure about
For
that?
real? Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, and it happened, and it's been amazing. We've only been doing Complex Unsanctioned for a month now, but we've had amazing guests on. We've had Jade Cargill, we've had Bianca Belair, Smoke Dizza, Liv Morgan, Aljamain Sterling, and it's been a roller coaster ride, to say the least. Because again, like Church of Joshi started out of boredom with the pandemic, and it's blossomed and it's grown. And to be able to do so many things that I've been able to do with Church of Joshi and with WWE and Complex, like it's definitely a huge blessing. And I can't thank so many people that have like supported me throughout the way. Like it's just wild, because I don't consider myself a journalist. I don't consider myself I don't know. It's sometimes I guess I'm a little humble, a little too humble, but sometimes I'm still like, I'm nobody in wrestling, And I get to do these things, and I get to talk about, you know, the thing that I love twice a week on Spotify. So it's great. Like I never would have imagined, you know, starting Queen of the Ring from again having trying to have a creative outlet and coming from out of like a dark place in my life and creating Queen of the Ring, and that happened, and then creating Church of Joshi with my best friend out of boredom with the pandemic. And there's been so many different amazing opportunities that have come from it that I didn't plan that. It's just happened, and I'm eternally grateful for it to happen.
That sounds so good. And the fact that you're so humble about it. But here's the thing. Here's the thing though. I was just telling someone else's yesterday. Like, I don't believe that there aren't nobodies in wrestling.
Hmm.
Like, fans are fans. Those are a part of we are a part of the sport itself,
Yeah.
because a lot of our voices are heard, and they do listen no matter how much they try to make us feel like, or try to pretend like they don't, just for the gangster of it all. They listen to us. So I really feel like there aren't any nobodies in wrestling at all. So I feel like for you to do what you do, you may consider it, like, oh well, I'm just a da, 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 da. That's not true. So I believe that, like, I really do choose to believe that there aren't any nobodies in wrestling, and you're doing what you're doing in a positive way, and you talking about what you love in a positive way really does matter. So don't ever feel like that at all. Please don't at all.
Is this the point where we cry?
I guess so. This has to be the point where we kind of, if you want to, we can cry.
No.
I mean, because I feel the same way sometimes as well. But then I just have to remember, like, there just aren't any nobodies in wrestling. So
It's true.
that should be on a shirt.
It's true.
Maybe I should make that a shirt.
There you go. There you go.
So, do you feel a sense of pride in terms of, your representation as being a woman of color in the in wrestling media?
I do. I do have
Hmm.
I do have a sense of pride, you know. I as a woman having space in this industry is amazing, but to be a queer Puerto Rican woman with this platform that I have is I do have a lot of pride with it, and I think that sometimes I don't give myself the opportunity to pat myself in the back for those kind of things. I guess if you can say that, like,
Hmm.
um, you know, identity and finding your own identity, especially in uh, within your own ethnicity, uh, is hard. And especially when you get older, and especially, growing up, like, I was into, again, like, I was into wrestling and punk rock and Marvel, and I wasn't, I guess, in my parents' eyes, the quintessential Puerto Rican kid. So finding my identity and being proud of who I am, I think that's just something that everybody goes through, especially when they're an adult, and especially when they're turning 30. But and as of recently, like, it was just 4 years ago, or 4 or 5 years ago, that I came out as bi. So I'm still discovering myself in a whole different degree.
Hmm.
But sometimes, I want to carry more pride in that. It's just sometimes I don't. I guess I don't want to, like, come off as if I never want to come off as if I'm bragging. So sometimes it's hard for me to congratulate myself or to celebrate my accomplishments because I just, like, keep it inside, which is a problem.
Me too.
But yeah, but I do have a lot of pride, and I have a lot of pride within myself, and sometimes I'm the type of person where I like to celebrate it with myself because I need to celebrate it with myself first so that I can feel validated, and then
Hmm.
I'll go online and I'll be like, "Hey, I am who I
Yeah.
am." But yeah, like, most of the time I want to scream on the rooftop, like, I am a queer woman of color in wrestling, and sometimes that's uncommon, but at the same time, I never want to come off as if, like, I'm the only one, because
Right.
I don't. I'm not. And there's plenty of room for all of us. But I think for now, I just take the joy of um, uh, being a woman in this space, and again, I'm going through my own identity crisis outside of Queen of the Ring, more so of just like, being openly queer now, and just embracing my ethnicity much more than I would before. Um, but yeah, it's been a journey, but
Hmm.
it's been a journey because there's just it's been a tough 2 years. It's been a tough two
It
years with the
has.
pandemic and everything, and being inside and having the opportunity to finally kind of like be with myself. I think a lot of people have had this experience where it's like, who I am I outside of a 9 to 5, outside of hustling for an audition, like who am I, what do I stand for, and what do I believe in, and how does that equate to um my identity that has already been paved for me, of being Puerto Rican, of being bisexual. So, there's a lot of therapy that comes with that.
Yeah. I 100% get that because I'm in therapy now. I mean, gosh, I mean, that's just the truth of life. Sometimes you just need a little bit extra help to get the healing that you need
Yeah, for
to
sure.
accept and love yourself. And there's no issue with that. There's no judgments here with that at all. So I 100% get it. Like we're all you and I both are on the journey to loving ourselves, and having pride in who we are as people. And I'm just really glad that you are, that you, even though you're humble, it's like you still want to be able to take credit. And I understand how that feels because sometimes I deal with imposter syndrome. Like, am I really? No. Like, but then there are other times where I have to remind myself, like, look, you did this. It's okay to own it and just, love that. And I completely get where you're coming from with it.
You gotta give yourself that like hard love sometimes, that tough love of like you stare yourself in the mirror and you're just like, girl, you did that. Continue to do that. It's hard. It's so hard, and especially with imposter syndrome in not only in wrestling but just in media, when there's so many people that are doing amazing things, and of course you're
Yes.
rooting for them, but also at the same time you're kind of like, am I not doing something that I should be doing? Like,
Right.
am I not doing enough? Or when you take those breaks so you don't get burnt out, sometimes you get those feelings of like, I feel like I'm left out. Like, I feel like I should be doing more. I should be on my computer, like editing videos, but I have nothing to edit, and it's just like, it's hard. It's hard to have imposter syndrome. And I think sometimes it's hard to talk about it with different people because I think we all fall victim to it. But I
Yes.
think it's a really hard topic to talk about without almost sounding bitter towards other people and bitter with yourself. And just like finding the balance of imposter syndrome and I guess like a lack of confidence sometimes. And that's also hard to balance too. Being confident, that is
Oh God, yeah.
not there for me. Not there.
But we're getting there.
We getting there.
We're trying.
Thanks to my therapist every Wednesday at 4 p.m. It's great.
Yes. Gotta love our therapist. Gotta love it. Well, Alex, I would just like to ask you one last question, and that is what do you believe the future holds for you?
Anxiety.
Oh my
There's gonna be a
God.
lot of anxiety happening in my future, baby. No. I don't, like I said before, I don't make goals, so I don't really know what's in store for my future. Um, I would love to. I think if I did have a goal, one of my goals is to finally open up a space in wrestling where, especially for a lot of marginalized people in wrestling, to just discuss it in a healthy way. And also to just like shine more of a mainstream light in it. And I know that's everybody's goal, but
Mhm.
I think the way I like to like approach wrestling and my content with wrestling sometimes is like, you know, like it's a nerd culture. It's part of nerd culture. Um, so that's like my plans for, I guess, the future of my content, but the future of me and I don't really know. I mean, I would love to do more in wrestling. I would love to uplift more um, indie wrestling and more people in wrestling, but uh, I would really like to get more into like just nerd conversations. Like I would love to dive into the to a space of like Star Wars and Marvel with wrestling fans cuz it all comes hand in hand for all of us, you know.
Mhm.
Um I think everybody's goal is to, I guess, make it big in wrestling, but sometimes my goal is like how can I make it big outside of wrestling but also bring wrestling with me and let everybody else in the world know that like wrestling is still cool. you
Yes.
know? Um but yeah, I don't really have anything for my future. I just hope that my future is uh is is healthy. I hope that my future is still bright and I just hope to meet more people, work with more people, collaborate with more people and just like learn. I'm still learning in this space.
Mhm.
And I just I just hope that in the future I just make more people proud.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'm just going to be corny for a minute and tell you that I believe your future is bright, and it's so bright that
Ah!
I'll need shades. So,
And you brought out the Shawn Michaels heart shades. Ah,
yes.
ah, ah! I could die. Ah.
I love these things. They're so cute, but it's hard because I actually have prescribed glasses that I should wear more often.
I feel you.
Yeah, I'm kind of blind.
Yeah, I will sacrifice my eyesight for a good look with glasses.
Oh my god, it's so hard. But Alex, thank you so much for coming on the Hardy Wrestling Podcast Live Vibe. So please tell everyone where they can find you and everything you've got going on.
Yeah, of course. Okay, this is going to be a long list, so bear with me, people. All right. So, if you want to follow me on the socials, I'm at Queen of the Ring with two G's on Twitter. I am at underscore Queen of the Ring on Instagram. I'm also on TikTok, although we'll see how that journey goes. Uh, you can follow my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Queen of the Ring. I've been watching Total Divas, and it's my first time watching it, so it's been a hell of a time. We play video games there. I also have a YouTube channel, youtube.com/Queen of the Ring Wrestling. And if you want to follow all of my other shows, Church of Joshi, you can follow us there on Twitter and Instagram. I think by the time that this drops, especially audio, we will have a Patreon. So Church of Joshi
Yay!
on Patreon. Follow us there. We go live every Sunday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time on twitch.tv/KaylaVision, who is my co host, who you should also follow because she is amazing. And, of course, Complex Unsanctioned on Spotify and Spotify Live. We go live every Monday and Wednesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. And we have had amazing guests so far. And you can listen to any of our past episodes on Spotify on Complex Unsanctioned. And I don't think I am missing anything else. Woo!
That's impressive. That's a very impressive list there. But
Thank you.
yes, thank you so much for coming on my show. And of course, you guys know that you can follow me, your girl Stephanie Hardy, on Instagram and Twitter at Queen Steph Hardy, and follow the Hardy Wrestling Podcast on Instagram at Hardy Wrestling Podcast and on Twitter at Hardy WrestlePod. So yeah, thank you so much for coming on the show. And of course, until next time, bye y'all.